MSD podcast, MIL CQC, primary stances and guards, reasoning and developments. With having a captive audience of serious enthusiasts and practitioners of military, armed and unarmed combat and military self-defense, we are getting a considerable amount of questions in regard to skills origins, skills developments, and the reasoning and principles and practices associated with such skills. With this being the case, I've decided to record this podcast on primary stances and guards, their origins, and the reasoning behind them from both a initiation and employment perspective and from a development-related practices. The stances and guards that are going to be focused on in this file are my allied tradecraft training learnt primary stances and guards. Any development of new tactics and skills is undertaken by our Master Chief Instructor, assisted by our Master Instructors, and is brought about by necessity. Changes in times, threats, weapons, tactics, or, in some cases, historic skills that have become less effective and need to be made redundant. There are other reasons for skills being made redundant, dormant, or retired, including changes in laws of self-defense, rules of engagement, and other reasons. But in this podcast, we will focus on skills being modified or replaced to ensure the primary skill sets are the most current, effective, and proven. In regards to stances and guards, in my time as the Master Chief Instructor, I have had to make skills adjustments and changes for various reasons, including skills training packages for civilian usage, such as our DWAR, Declare War Against Rape package, and for a range of underdogs facing overdog violent threats where the disparity between the assaulter and their target is considerable and requires situational and threat-specific boots work, stances and guards, targets, and means of contacting targets to provide best and safest chances of threat neutralization. The importance of stances and guards in military actions on, specifically CQC unarmed combat, is that the combatant is compromised by uniform, battle dress, threat and situation, and as such, being compromised requires high-level, hard-cover guarding protection to maximize safety. For covert operators in roles such as urban operations, where they are not compromised and can maintain the element of surprise, and for civilian self-defense situations where the aggressor has no prior knowledge of their targets, prior training, and as such capabilities, assuming a neutral stance status is preferred over a stance and guard where you have now compromised yourself as being willing and capable, losing the element of surprise. The neutral stance provides even opportunity combat boots work in all directions. It also lessens physical and psychological aspects in regard to holding position, stress and tension, even lactic acid considerations. What is important in a neutral stance and guard is maintaining an affinity with the ground surface in order to be able to employ expedient action boots work, either to engage or counter-engage, including evasive counter-engagement or evasion and escape. In regard to a neutral stance, that incorporates a neutral guard status, arms pinned to the sides, maintaining a ready position that is cohesive with transitions from the neutral stance and guard to a front stance and guard, enables the maintaining of highest levels of ready and willingness, as well as self-protection, safety practices. Our predecessor skills developers would have looked at the neutral stance being a primary practice, with the combatant being uncompromised and being able to maintain the element of surprise and disguise their close combat capabilities. The neutral stance and neutral guarding arm positioning would have had to have fitted with belt order or webbing of the time, as my role as a military elite instructor over more than 2 decades, webbing, battle dress and body armor changes produced the need for adjustments to the previous neutral stance arm positioning to fit with webbing, battle dress and body armor considerations and requirements to present a neutral status. Even if compromised, being able to portray oneself as a non-immediate threat and conduct oneself as if non-aggressive, while maintaining a neutral, ready and willing combatant status can provide advantages, edges and opportunities simply by remaining grey and an unknown quantity at that point in time. Assuming such a neutral status pre-actions on, the initiation of combat or counteractions can provide from such a neutral status an element of surprise to combat or counter-engage enemy actions. This maintaining of a neutral stance and neutral guard with a positive boots ground affinity combined with brain to boot combatant mental toughness enhancement tactics and skills best prepares the combatant to engage or counter-engage in a primary output state of readiness and willingness to effectively, by best of battle-proven, foul or deadly means, threat neutralize. Our allied Master Chief Instructor predecessors' considerations with the development of neutral stances and front stances and guards, as well as side stances and guards, would have been both expedient action and high-level maintaining of stability capabilities. The stances and guards had to transition in fluid actions through skills, cohesive commonality, and in regard to threat reduction and maximizing combatant self-protection through any changes in stance and guard transitions. Development factors would have included setting and transitioning from one stance or stance and guard to another to maximize safety by not moving towards the enemy threat and under and actions on, as such, increasing contact impact. They would also have taken into consideration with our European military unarmed combat, not comprising of blocking actions, but only hard cover guarding and deflection capabilities. Maximum hard cover guarding upper quadrants is provided by the hard cover guarding and deflection capabilities, and lower quadrant high-level counter-engagement protection is provided by combating enemy lower quadrant assaults by means of lead boot combat stamp kicking actions. Ground cover boots work primary practices are by sliding and gliding boots means over stepping to maintain a both boots ground affinity and as such increase stability throughout actions on ground cover in all directions. The side stance and guard predominantly used for close range unarmed defensive assault striking skills or for direct line stamp kicking long range unarmed defensive assault skills employments provides only a narrow target line to the enemy with the major bodily targets being turned away from the enemy. Under side stance and guards skills executions by squat crouching and hard cover guarding, all upper quadrants are covered by the lead hand hard cover guard and backed up by the rear hand, and all lower quadrants self-protection capabilities are provided by hard boots stamp kicking, combating a kick with a kick. The Master Chief Instructor developers of yesteryear, like with current Master Chief Instructor developers, was based on economy of movement, less is more, maximum hard cover guarding protection, and threat neutralization by best of battle proven dirty tricks brigade tactics and skills. The side stance and guard makes enemy seizure of the combatant extremely difficult, with the width of the side stance and guard hard covering combined with the width of the stance, and as such makes grabs, holds and seizure prevention combined with disarming or disabling counter-engagement a very simplistic practice. Under actions on, simply by squat crouching in a side stance and guard and employing hard cover guarding, the likelihood of the enemy's striking capabilities missing their target is increased and puts the combatant in a position to launch stationary hard boot stamp kicking to destroy the enemy's knee joint or kneecap ligaments, as well as the execution of close range unarmed defensive assault striking skills combinations by expedient ready set go squat crouching capabilities. Our allied predecessor Master Chief Instructor developers realized disparities in physical attributes, physical size, physicality, disadvantages, and as such, by the utilization of side stance and guard rapid entry strikes to overwhelm, incapacitate, injure, off balance the enemy, and when vulnerable, by means of the combatant employing a swivel transition from side on to front on and executing what is known as a finishing skill with the master hand or master boot, the chances of threat neutralization are increased by considerable while maintaining maximum safety. In a side stance and guard, hard fast tracking forward momentum can easily be achieved with every sliding boots action, and the transition from side on to front on when the enemy is vulnerable can be seamless, and momentum not only maintained but increased by means of the finishing hard hands or hard boots means of threat neutralization. The primary ranges for combat actions on initiation and executions, as well as the distances of primary maintained ground between the enemy and the combatant under evasive counter-engagement, was something that I looked at closely when I took over as the Group Master Chief Instructor, and have made changes to ensure the highest levels of chances of formidable foe incapacitation, threat neutralization can be achieved in our current times. It very much comes down to being ready, able, and willing by means of range, skills, and mentally tough commitment. Obviously, employing armed options that under our systems have the same or very similar foundations and fundamentals, the chances of threat neutralization are increased by considerable. However, this file is focused on predominantly unarmed close quarters combat actions on stances and guards, and as such, hard, heavy, and fast combat boots, entry and escape or evasion tradecraft practices. In my early days training at the Baldock Institute under the late Harry Baldock, and being part of his development of skills including footwork, stances and guarding, I learnt the importance of boots positioning, width of stance and gait, best means of skills or actions initiation, and hard heavy boots, stability, maintaining tactics and skills. The width and depth of stances and compromised guards have stood the test of time, being used in the Great Wars and after to effectively provide high-level protection and threat neutralization. The front stance and guard provides high-level guarding capabilities combined with sound ground affinity and a stance that promotes expedient combat actions on, as well as counter-engagement from stationary and by means of evasion and escape, or evasion and counter-engagement threat neutralization. The pre-actions on guarding of the front stance and guard at approximately 45 degrees angle, hands evenly apart, the width of the outer line of the enemy combatant's face makes enemy striking difficult, getting around or through the hard cover guard, which is met by the combatant squat crouching, increasing the chances of the enemy strikes missing, and hard cover guarding, retracting the arms, providing outer body line upper quadrant protection, and straight line or uppercut deflection with any lower quadrant attacks like kicking skills to the lower quadrants being combated with heavy boots, stamp kicking. These physical principles and practices not only provide maximum safety and highest chances of unarmed threat neutralization, but also increase confidence in the combatant's capabilities to threat neutralize, and as such, increase their chances of victory over defeat. Once again, it comes back to less is more. Having a single primary option that incorporates expedient actions, hard cover guarding, stability, minimizing target mass, maximizing stability, and providing the opportunity to, at close range, including up to point-blank body contact range, the targeting of the enemy's soft or sensitive targets by hard hands, hard boots, is the modus operandi of our European military close combat in regard to unarmed threat neutralization. Unarmed offensive combat skills in a front stance and guard are predominantly executed inside of 1 meter between the combatant's lead boot and the enemy's lead boot, and are made up of ready, set, go, squat crouching, initiation combined with deception, distraction, dirty tricks, and changing from front on to side on as part of the entry, reducing target mass combined with hard cover guarding to maximize safety and increase the chances to the highest level possible of threat neutralization. The front stance and guard transition to side-on stance and guard status is employed both with long-range stamp kicking and close-range striking combination strategies because it, once entering the kill zone, minimizes target mass by changing from the front stance and guard to side stance and guard. When I come up through the ranks, stationary counter-offensive assaults from a side stance and guard were simply by static counter-engagement, and over the many years of regular assessments of skills and the development process in the development of required skills, we now have evasive counter-engagement options from a side stance and guard. This development also included escape and evasion skills from both a side stance and guard and front stance and guard status that were not previously part of the counter-engagement or escape and evasion strategies. Economy of movement is not only required for covering ground or clearing ground, but also for enemy orientation and alignment, which has been achieved by reducing the required movement to remain centered by 50%. This has proved very effective in combat and counter-engagement actions, and importantly, in self-protection levels of capability. There are wide-ranging considerations that have to be taken into combatants, stances, guards, soft and hard boots, movements, and holding ground, specifically in relation to roles, duties, threat specifics, and in regard to body armor, battle dress, load bearing, carrying of weapons and equipment, and the protection and retention of weapons and equipment. Weapon retention comes down to three primary factors: retaining the weapon or piece of equipment, preventing the enemy seizing or securing the weapon or piece of equipment, and retention, a Todd Close Combat Systems term for regaining control of a seized and secured weapon from the enemy. Having full mental toughness enhancement strategies that combine with threat neutralization physical skills, initiation, and executions is most important, as well as understanding that all human beings, regardless of their physical or mental makeup, when their life support systems or delicate human senses are effectively targeted, provide highest levels of threat neutralization capability. Our military master instructor, skills developers, and caretakers of the skills, past and present, constantly evaluate skills, performance, and capabilities, and where required, provide combatants with the knowledge and know-how on how to make minor adjustments or tweaks at real time to maintain the highest level of self-protection and self-preservation, and give them the best opportunities of enemy threat neutralization. Importantly, combatants are instructed in real time, under actions on, fast mapping, assessment, and decision making, and are provided with full strategies, including all contingencies to deal with changes in threat and situation, to give them the best combat action or counter-engagement action capabilities to neutralize formidable foes. While combatants are instructed in wide-ranging and diverse capabilities to neutralize threats in different roles, different duties, different situations, and under wide-ranging threats, having primary practices specific to the faced threat where less is more enable rapid assessment and decision-making, reducing confusion and deciding on different ways or options that can only increase risk under a real-life threat and actions on. The shoulder width, neutral stance, and front stance with the master boot, shoulder width apart from the non-master boot, rear boot toes in line with front boot heel, and the side stance and guard, boots shoulder width apart, boots and body facing directly forward, head turned towards the enemy with the non-master arm guarding at right angles and the master hand and arm providing backup protection capabilities. These principle-based practices and measured stances and guards have stood the test of time and provided safe and effective means of threat neutralization, and still do today in their most current primary practices form. Importantly, they have been tested in combat in past times and in current times, and the reason they are adopted primary practices is because they are the best of safest and most effective means of threat neutralization in relation to the specific faced threats. This is an important consideration with skill selection of skills that have not been specifically developed for the battlefield, proven in training and under testing, and importantly, proven under actions on. Having post-actions on information from combatants is most important to ensure the best of primary practices make up the training regime. Just like training as an exponent, proponent, assistant instructor, or instructor, the processes and teachings for senior and master instructors in the development of skills and the tools to develop, test, prove, and adopt primary practices are very important undertakings that require only those that have been trained and qualified in such expertise to be responsible for developing skills that may come down to the combatant's life or death. The most basic, simple test of a skill's capabilities is the tool we call the TOC, Test of Capability. And by employing this test under various degrees and levels of threat, the individual skill can be tested to destruction and any weaknesses identified, as well as identifying its strengths, and if it is truly the best primary practice to achieve threat neutralization under the specific threat and in the specific situation. Testing skills on different terrain, under daylight and dark night, training and testing, as well as ensuring combatants are in full battle dress, body armor, load bearing, weapon carrying is most important, as the skills, without being tested in such realistic, practical realities, cannot be deemed best practice, fit for purpose, primary MIL CQC tradecraft practices. And it's all too late in full body armor, battle dress, pack on your back, carrying your weapon, to find out that your skills simply will not work with and under such conditions. While many may not give a lot of consideration to the simplicity but all-encompassing safety and capabilities enhancement of stances and guards required to be effective in combat, to the Master Chief Instructor, developer of tactics and skills, it all begins with stances and guards, followed by soft and heavy boots to be able to effectively hold ground, cover ground, make range, and neutralize threats, or clear ground and counter-engage, or evade and escape. Stances and guards are truly foundation fundamentals, and in the writing of a TMP, training and management package, would come very close, if not at the front, as all skills, initiation, and executions will come off a stance or stance and guard. Stances and guards, initial training in the basic primary stance and guards will come at an entry level through enabling level, followed by mastering of wide-ranging considerations in regard to the setting and executing of stance and guards, and making minor adjustments to maintain a willing, able, ready status to hard protect and make yourself as safe as possible and be as ready to threat neutralize in an instant. While battle dress and body armor may be seen as restrictive to the combatant, it provides high-level protection and capability. Just look at battle helmets, body armor, hard protectors, hardened gloves, and combat boots, and you'll see what may be lost in the capability to employ high, complex techniques is more than covered for at military close quarters combat actions on range in regard to high-level protection that fit with our European military, unarmed and armed combat skills, threat neutralization. It very much comes down to the best tools for the specific job and role. And when full battle dress and body armor is combined with the best of foul and deadly dirty tricks brigade battle-proven practices at close to point-blank body contact range, combined with primary proven stances, guards, soft and hard boots, means and methods, the combatant has a high chance of threat neutralization. There is no second best when it comes to the development, proving, and adopting of primary threat neutralization practices. And the master instructors, developers must be practical realists. They must be able to identify what is a primary, best, safest practice and what has weaknesses, faults, and risks, and must never select any skills that increase risk and danger and do not provide best chances of fast and safe threat neutralization. It must never come down to ego, hidden agendas, or styles, or techniques, preferences. Skills must be proven under extremes and must prove the individual skill to be better, simpler, safer, quicker, by higher levels of overkill threat neutralization than anything else. Stances and guards can be measured, including by TOCs and by hardcover guarding, truing of the guard. And this podcast, in regard to some of the aspects and considerations of the neutral stance, front stance and guard, and side stance and guard, as well as the reasoning for developments of the primary stances and guards, will give you an insight into considerations and practices required for identification of the best tradecraft skill sets for military battlefield actions on threats neutralization.